So I've been complaining about the fact that I don't like that this piece has a woman with an open smile. So I'm going to get rid of her open smile. I sort of sketched in a new mouth for her, and now I'm just going to gesso over. And this is going to take a couple coats of gesso to get rid of her old mouth so that I can draw in a new one. I'm just going to fix this with gesso and a little bit of reworking. So now that the gesso is dried, I'm going to draw in the new lip line. She's going to have much fuller lips than she had originally. That's okay. I'd rather have her have full lips than be too smiley. So that looks better. And I'm going to do a little shading. I'm trying to be really light with this charcoal pencil because the gesso might still be damp. And if it is, the charcoal pencil tends to scratch it off rather than add any shading. Not really happy with this contour out here. But it's better. So now I'm gonna seal down the charcoal with a little bit of matte medium. Normally when I use charcoal, I spray with a little bit of hairspray, but when it's just this little bit, I use matte medium. And I'm not wiping it on the piece, I'm just pressing down, because you can see that charcoal lifts a little bit, and I don't want to smear it all over my figure. So now after this dries, I can go in with color and color her lips. So now I have a woody, and I like this color for lips. It's a very orange red, and I kind of like to match my lip color to what else is going on the figure. So there's a lot of orange on this one. I want to keep her lips kind of orange or coral. So I'm just using it to add lines of color to the outside edges and color it in pretty densely. And these woodies are water-soluble pigment. They're actually designed for kids. So I can use water-soluble media with them. And that means a little bit of matte medium. When I first started using water-soluble media, I used water, because you know, water-soluble, you use water, right? And then my friend Amy said, oh, I use matte medium with them. And it just totally changed everything for me. So I'm kind of activating the color by painting around the outer edges. And now I'm going to feather the color inward. And what I'm trying to do is create a sort of darker look where there's shadow and a little bit lighter where there's highlight. And on lips, there's generally a highlight right in the center of the lower lip. So, and then I'm going to come back on top of this with some marker in probably red to do really dark darks along the outer edges and kind of give this some definition because it's a little mushy. So I'm going to let that dry and then I'll come back and do another layer. Okay, this is dry, and for some reason I'm still having trouble getting the Sharpie to work over it. So instead I'm using a wet watercolor pencil, which will do pretty much the same thing. And I'm just outlining and then dipping the tip of the pencil in the water so that I can use it kind of like a brush. And then I'm going to switch over to a brown one, which is not as sharp as I would like, but just to get some good shadows going. And to kind of soften that black line that I drew with the charcoal pencil several layers ago, that's still kind of showing. I really like adding details with watercolor pencils because they're very forgiving. So I've gotten a little color where it shouldn't be, and now I'm using a wet brush to kind of remove it. And just make sure that everything is filled in. Got a couple places over here where there's still a little bit of white gesso showing. I don't really want that. Oops. So I don't want to stick my wet fingers in it. But this is good because it'll show you how forgiving this is. I can just take the water and wipe that right away. And sometimes paint isn't that forgiving. And so you end up with little paint smudgies where you don't want it. And this way, I can just add in color and then lift it away where I don't want it. But I think that's good. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll probably do that same thing with the sponge and the matte medium to seal it. Just lay a little matte medium on it and press it down once to encase that watercolor pencil so that it won't bleed on the other things that I'm doing. After I stepped back from this, I thought that the highlight wasn't light enough, so now I'm using a yellow watercolor pencil to add that lower lip highlight back in and brighten it up. There, much better. So here's my sealer coat going on, just like that. And you can see, just with that little pat, a little bit of the color lifted. So, and then I usually go around with the back end of the sponge and just clean up any excess. Try to keep the sponge out of the area of color. Just like that. And now when it dries, I'll have beautiful new lips.